Everybody, this is Perch, and one of the controversial figures over the last 15 years or so has been Dan DiDio. And what's peculiar is that unlike other controversial figures like Cameron Stewart or Alan Moore, I'm not grouping them together. They're very different people. Please, nobody draw comparisons. I'm just talking about people who've had a lot of articles written about them, a lot of differing opinions from Graham Morrison, John Byrne. I mean, just all these different people. Dan DiDio is an interesting case because he was the face of DC for a period of time, and he did usher in the New 52, which was, as we've talked about here and other places, it was a success in a lot of ways for DC. At least the first half of it was. Financially, I suspect if you really penciled it all out, the New 52 probably penciled out as profitable or successful for DC when all was said and done. If you just took the status quo before the New 52 and then the New 52 and financially. Now, definitely it isolated a lot of creators. It created a lot of problems. It created some new enemies. Definitely there was a handful of kind of editors and writers and others that got caught up in a super weird mix. There's a bunch of contracts signed during that time that became very problematic over the years afterward in terms of their structure. There was certainly a ton of problems with the New 52 that didn't do DC any favors by any stretch of the imagination. But financially, on paper, the New 52 probably did more positive things over the course than negative. And if you gauge the first, say, 2.5 years of the New 52, absolutely, there's no question it would come out ahead. Over the whole scheme of things, again, that last couple of years were rough. But Dan DiDio became the face of it for better or worse, and as time went on, for worse. Dan DiDio became this very polarizing figure that people really wanted to see fired, more than Joe Quesada. And that's interesting in and of itself, is even today, with people who absolutely hate Marvel and complain about Marvel and just cannot stand anything that is done with Marvel, I would say that Dan DiDio still generated a lot more hatred than Joe Quesada does today. It's hard to kind of explain how angry and loud the Fire Dan DiDio movement was, and not without reason. It's not like the guy was a saint, completely innocent, and he never did a single thing to offend anyone, and why people were picking on him was a mystery. It wasn't a mystery. He was outspoken at times, and he would make comments that were, quickly memeable, if for lack of a better word. He made a lot of statements that were very easy to kind of toss around and really get angry about and generate anger. Some of his comments about why back issues or classic issues were selling better than new things, and some of his defense of the New 52 often came across antagonistic. Whether that was his intent or not, that's how it sounded. And the other kind of interesting thing that I think played against Dan DiDio was that, he's there with Jeff Johns. And Jeff Johns has this reputation at DC and with customers and fans of being very fan-friendly, very respectful of legacy, and a figure that a lot of people have very fond memories of, largely because of what he did with Green Lantern and with Flash. But, in general, Jeff Johns and his Justice League run, he felt like a friend to comic readers and collectors. He felt like somebody who was on their side. And that was really kind of highlighted and underscored with DC Rebirth, where Jeff Johns was almost the face of that kind of very public apology in some ways to the customers of saying, we lost our way, and this is, we're going to earn your trust back. We're going to earn your dollar back. And Dan DiDio, what a lot of people forget is that those videos featured Johns and DiDio. It's just that people, maybe unfairly, but they read into that video that Johns meant it, and DiDio was saying all these things kind of, through clenched teeth, as if he was forced to. Now, that's probably not true. I think that's a lot of projection that's going on of people kind of looking at DiDio and saying, well, the guy is clearly a scumbag. But it's hard to, it's hard to imagine. It becomes unfair very quickly that was what was actually going on. And instead, it feels more like some people were either uh, slightly or thoroughly disgruntled, and at some point, their experience with Dan DiDio, ripping the rug out from everyone for the new 52, became kind of personal to the level that no matter what he did after that, he was going to be the person who didn't care about comics, didn't care about continuity, didn't care about your favorite characters. He was just somebody who was an enemy. He was somebody who he exemplified somebody who was willing to make a cheap buck, even if it meant destroying years and years of continuity. Of all the ways you can annoy customers, it feels like continuity is the one that becomes extremely personal for people. That's a whole video in and of itself that I should do. But Dan DiDio got that reputation. He never seemed to really ever recover from it. It always just became kind of, his issue. So that is, in terms of, again, the whole thing gets kind of hard to really nail down, because I think that in many ways Dan DiDio did earn a little bit of the dislike. If you, like I mentioned before, if you listened to his interviews, you looked at what he said, he was very dismissive of a lot of things. He did have kind of wacky ideas, and I don't think he completely, he's acknowledged it himself, I don't think he completely got why some of the changes he was making were going to be so controversial. But here's the thing. Again, Joe Quesada has made many of the same statements. In fact, there was a show, on Drink and Draw or one of these, where Quesada was on with DiDio, and they were talking about, they related to each other extremely well. Joe Quesada gave us the retconning of, or not retconning, but the erasure of Spider-Man's marriage, and Dan DiDio gave us the New 52. And in many ways, a lot of the New 52 stuff has been reversed or retconned or changed out. And a lot of the things that Joe Quesada did that were very similar have stuck. He's stood by them. And so, it feels a little bit unfair, or maybe a lot unfair, that Joe Quesada largely, again, and there's plenty of people who dislike him for sure, but he does not have the immediate gut kind of hatred reaction that Dan DiDio did. And I mean, today, even now, years, has it been a year? It's been more than a year since Dan DiDio was fired. And he still, there's still people hanging on to him as being the biggest villain in comics. And this isn't a video. It's weird. This video has become in defense of Dan DiDio. That's not really what I mean. Again, I think when you're in a management position, one of the fair or unfair things about that position is that you serve at the willingness of the company. You make decisions, and whether it succeeds or fails, I mean, the buck stops with you. In at least it should. And so I think that for whether it was fair or unfair, what happened to Dan DiDio was a result of he was a manager, he was in charge, he made bold decisions. His decisions panned out for a little while, and then they didn't. And he had a reputation inside of DC of being a loud and angry guy, and sometimes there was a lot of claims, not nearly as many as people do with Jim Shooter, but there were claims it was a hostile work environment and all the rest. There was the whole Eddie Berganza situation that kind of, as again the leader, it falls on your feet. But all things considered, I guess the summary here is, it's weird to me that, well, not weird. It's just, it shows that the personalities of some of these people, it does change our perceptions quite a bit. Despite everything, Joe Quesada has a rep for being a more fan-friendly, ally of the customers, and Dan DiDio has a rep of being a very, corporate suit kind of guy, and who doesn't care about the customers and doesn't care about certain things as they relate to comics. And it's just interesting, because I think the two are not as different as it may appear, and yet the fan reaction tends to be very, very different. But the question to you, first off, do you have this hatred of Dan DiDio? Maybe you could fill in a couple of blanks. Maybe you can explain why he gets some of the reaction he gets. What am I missing here? Where Dan DiDio is comics' greatest villain. Or maybe you're looking at this and you're going, yeah, what gives? Why does Joe Q get a pass on a lot of the same things people roast DiDio for? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course, as always. And thanks for listening.